Aloha and welcome to Koa Studio. In this video, I'm going to be working on a massive piece. It's going to be a knife in the shape of a pahoa, so a dagger, but more of a leomano style in that it's going to have a row of shark teeth. And the style of shark teeth that I'm going to be using on this piece, and I'll be using tiger shark teeth for this specific piece. So it's going to be a slashing style piece. And the first step is just drawing it out. I'm not using any patterns, or rather I'm not using any templates for this. I'm just kind of freehanding based off of some designs that I worked with the client on. Now the first couple of steps here are going to be cutting it out and beginning shaping. Now I noticed as I was beginning to shape here that the angle grinder wasn't really biting too well into the koa wood. It's a hardwood, and it's because my disc was old and started to burn over. So I went ahead and replaced that, and you'll notice immediately how much of a difference that made. It's insane how much of a change that is. But that's kind of what happens. So you want to be careful when you're working. It's tempting to want to use something to as far as you can, trying to save money on it. But you'll end up spending way more money just in the time it takes, just because you won't be working as fast. And so usually what I do, as soon as I notice something's not cutting as well, I'll replace it and just get a new either sanding disc or grinding pad, whatever I'm using, just so that I can keep up pace and not double or triple the amount of time it takes for me to work on something. Now the overall design of this piece is fairly simple, and so I did want to give it a little bit extra character, and so that's what you see me adding here with the angle grinder, or at least starting with the angle grinder, is the transition from the handle to the blade of the pahoa. I wanted to have a nice, clean, crisp edge that goes straight from that handle to there, but I have it angled going up. And the reason for that is so that it doesn't create a hot spot. If that angle, because it's going to be a sharp edge, as in it's going to be like a 90-degree angle that goes from the handle to the blade. If I have that too close to where you're holding on to, when you swing the piece or when you hold on to it, you're going to feel that edge in your hand and it's not going to feel good. So having it wrap up the blade like I have it going there, it's just going to make it feel better in the hand. You won't actually feel that edge, but you'll still get that nice, beautiful character transition between the handle and the blade of the piece. Similar to a metal blade, I am going to be adding a fuller or a channel to both sides of the blade on here, just because it's a heavy piece of wood. It's a very thick blade. It's going to be really heavy, and so having a really wide, thick fuller is going to add some contrast and some design features to it, and at the same time help reduce the weight. So it'll feel better in your hand. You'll swing it a lot cleaner. And I think it'll look really nice too, because it'll have, depending on what light you're looking at it, you'll see that fuller. You'll see the transition from the edge to the fuller to the spine, and it'll look really nice. And so I'm really excited with how this piece is turning out so far. It's turning out pretty awesome, actually. Now, I do get asked pretty frequently how long it takes me to make pieces, and it takes quite a while. I leave out a lot of steps when I'm filming just because they're boring, but I thought I'd go ahead and add some of those additional steps. That way you can see a little bit more behind the scenes, why it takes me so long to make these pieces. And it can be a challenge, so bear with me. Hopefully that adds some clarity as to why some pieces take so long to make and the effort that's involved in building them. But it's a ton of fun. I enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it as well. So the next couple steps that I have on this piece are just going to be cleaning up, sanding it down to 220 grit, cleaning up the edges, transition between the handle and the blade, and getting it ready to put in the groove.
Start it up. This is lit.
In cutting the groove, something happened that actually has never happened to me before. So I was cutting the groove, and when I do that, I pull the tungsten carbide bit along the line, and when I was doing that, the bit just snapped in half. I think it's probably because it got too hot. I'm not entirely sure. I've actually never had a bit snap like that on me. But sure enough, it just snapped right off. Luckily, I have additional bits, backups, and so I was able to put one in and continue cutting on the groove. One thing that I've learned, if you're ever cutting a groove like this and you're having to do it by hand, you don't have any other additional tools, it's a lot easier to pull across the wood rather than push or be vertical to it. You can make a straight line a lot easier that way, or at least that's the way that I've found that's easy for me. And once my groove is cut, I'm going to go ahead and sand it all the way down to 320 grit and get it ready to put in the teeth. Now the first step of putting in the teeth is I'm going to put just a little bit of epoxy mixed with wood shavings from this piece in the groove, and that's just going to help the teeth hold in place when I go to tap the teeth and put holes in the koa wood. Now to drill the holes in the wood, I'd first self-tap with the nail there, and then I just have a handheld drill. If I had a drill press, that'd probably be a lot faster and easier, but I don't. So that's why I tap those little preset holes first, is just to get it ready for that. Now what's really cool and really exciting is this is actually the last step before I get to oil the piece. Now, I was unbelievably excited to oil this piece. It's a really light grain koa wood, but man, is it beautiful. So the two-tone, you can see a lighter grain that comes right up next to the darker grain, so it's the two-tone. And then it has a nice tight wavy curl that goes along the entire spine of the piece. It actually goes down the handle too, but it's really difficult to see. But man, was this just a gorgeous piece to oil up. I use tung oil as my primary oil. I really like it. I know there's a lot of other finishing oils out there, but tung oil is one of my favorites. And once I have the piece fully oiled up, I let it sit for about 24 hours. I do that just to make sure it cures fully before I start working on the lashing of the piece. The cordage I use is a waxed cordage. It's a sail cordage, I think. It's a 2-ply, 2mm ply, and so depending on the piece, I might double that up. But the style of lashing that I do is just a triangle pattern, and you'll see that here in just a minute. The hand wrap I'm doing is just a simple hand wrap. It's going to have a loop underneath the whole wrap, and then once I wrap all the way up to the edge of the loop, I'll pull that tight with the tail that's left on the other side, and then I'll cut those tails off and tuck them underneath to clean it up. Here's the finished piece. Man, this piece turned out awesome. Such a beast of a piece. This is just so massive, which I feel like has a few jokes behind it in and of itself. I loved working on this piece. I wanted to test more with it, but because I'm going to be sending this to a client, I am only going to be testing a little bit with it. I'm just going to be hitting some water bottles just to see how it cuts. Otherwise, normally I would definitely be testing this with my ballistics gel. But man, does that look awesome in the light. So that's in my shed, and then the natural light outside. Just an absolutely gorgeous piece. Massive cutter. Man, this was a ton of fun. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Mahalo and aloha.